Hi there and welcome to this Ibrox. It's your Rangers podcast and it's Scott Patterson joining you again for your Sunday night. As always, you're very welcome. Just another quiet day in the world of Rangers, as I'm sure we'll find out as the hour goes by. Before we get into what we're going to discuss tonight, I want to say a big thank you to our good friends across at Zenith Coins who are looking after us as always. They are, of course, looking after the Rangers coin collection just now. 5 wonderfully crafted coins that celebrate our 150 years history. One for the founding fathers, one for Ibrox Stadium, one for the Barcelona Bears of 1972, a 4th coin that relates to the guys that were responsible for our great times of 9 in a row, and a 5th and final coin that celebrates the Steven Gerrard winning league championship. Hopefully there's going to be a 6th coin in the not too distant future. Listen, I'm really pleased to be joined on the pod this week by the master of everything on Twitter as far as stats is concerned. Patrick Caskey joins us. Hi, Patrick.
Hi, thanks for having me. I mean, it's quite apt. We're talking about Zenith coins, and Rangers have been both splashing and receiving plenty of coins in the past few days on footballers. Lots to talk about.
I love it. And listen, we should say one of the guys responsible, indeed, for our bulletins and indeed the owner of the Wednesday night bulletin, Kyle McLean, joins us. Hi, Kyle. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. It's a bit weird being on this side. It's been a long time since I've had to use my own login for Zoom, so it's good. Good to see it still works.
Absolutely. So listen, we should say if you are listening to us via our YouTube channel tonight, by all means get involved in the chats. Drop in a comment down the right hand side, and if we get to it, and indeed if we can get to them, we will. So as you can imagine, lots and lots to speak about tonight. Friendly down at Blackpool for the Bears. Wonderful day at the seaside, which we'll cover as the podcast goes on. We've got Malik Tillman to speak about, which was announced sort of post Friday bulletin pod, so we'll do a little bit about him. We obviously need to say goodbye to Calvin Bassey, sadly. We reckon that will be probably confirmed as early as tomorrow, we think. But Patrick, the kind of rumour that has kind of festered away a little bit, I think, towards the end of last week, at the same time as the Bassey rumour was going on. And today it's really picked up pace. It seems Rangers have agreed a fee with Liverpool for Ben Davies.
Yeah, it's not surprising, as a lot of deals in football work these days. It's sort of 3 domino effects. Man United go sign Lisandro Martinez, which they announced today, for an eye-watching 60 million. They go replace him with Bassey, which seems all but done. Obviously, he's in Ajax or rather Amsterdam, signing for Ajax. I think it's medical or whatever. And then now we finally, the last contingency of the deal, we go and sign Ben Davies, which appears to be as good as just a press release is needed and a photo of him in the strip in front of a billboard posing. But no, yeah, exactly as that. But no, I think it's a good deal. It's all come quite quick, which is encouraging. The fact that Rangers being prepared and have a number of, or assume a number of targets to replace players with. I don't think it's like the best deal possible, but I do think what is quite good is he's pretty much guaranteed, or as good a guarantees, come in and do well. We need also to replace Bassey with 2 players because he's both a left back and a left centre back for us, which is a testament to his versatility. And this is a banker. He will go out there and play well. He did really well for Sheffield last season, albeit he didn't play much. He's relatively injury-free. He's had a few hamstring injuries, but that seems to be a thing of the past that haven't really bothered him for well over 2 years. He's good on the ball, good tackler, quite passive, fine, doesn't get fouled, doesn't give away too many fouls. I think it's a good deal, and it should allow us to have a bit of fun signing a left back to finish replacing Bassey, maybe spend a bit of money, sign someone younger, because we've tended to go in a bit of a safer route so far this year, signing quite a few, not old players by far, I don't think. I think it would be offensive to some of the listeners by pretending 27 is old. But correct. Perhaps more secure. But no, I'm overall happy with it. The structure seems to be that we're paying just below 3 million up front, and then just above 1 million in add-ons, which I think is about as ideal as you can get.
And Kyle, it's interesting we're obviously going to come to Bassey leaving, which I'm disappointed about. However, I don't believe his stock's ever going to be higher, so I think we have to press the button on it. But Patrick refers to the fact that because Bassey had that flexibility of being able to play left centre half or left back, it looks like if we're bringing in Ben Davies, he effectively fills one of the gloves that Bassey's going to leave, which means that we can now maybe focus on getting a left back to come in and challenge Borna Barisic for that position.
Yeah, well, it's having watched Borna yesterday in the Blackpool game, I thought he did well, but we definitely need someone challenging him, as you said, and maybe not back up, but I mean, there's an argument maybe even ahead of him. Forgive my language on this, but Borna sometimes suffers from shite the bed syndrome. Seen him do it a couple of times this season, where he's just seen it in old firms and big games. He's just went to pieces, and I think and I think it's imperative that we do get someone in there. But it's nice to see the club doing their business so quickly. I mean that's. Well, Bassey's not even been officially announced as leaving yet, and it already looks like we found a replacement. I mean, it's just testament. I know Ross Wilson's taken a bit of a week, 10 days ago, he was getting absolutely slaughtered on social media everywhere you looked. But I mean, he's talked about it before, and Gerrard's talked about it, Gio's talked about it. This list of players that we have for every position, should somebody go, should a manager go, whatever. And yet again, it seems to have come to fruition that's what he's gone out and done there. And if Patrick's saying it's a good signing, then I'm all for it.
Patrick, one of the things that I always think when we bring in a player is the enormity of coming to sign for Glasgow Rangers. And I think sort of you've heard players indeed refer to just they don't realise how big the club is until they rock up. We've seen Ben Davies sort of carve out a decent career for himself at Preston. Liverpool come knocking on the door, and he has the chance to go there. Big club, huge history, great following, very, very similar to ourselves in a lot of respects. He goes there and he just doesn't get a look in at all. Do we think that's, I mean, it could very much be down to rather the quality that Liverpool have in the position that he's hoping to draft in? Should we be concerned that he's maybe found that sort of mentality going from wee club to bigger club a bit difficult, because he's going to get that when he comes up the road here?
I don't think so. I don't think it's a fair litmus test for a good Rangers defender is being able to make it Liverpool. I think it's a perfect example of, you see a lot of the sort of elite clubs in England, they do often with goalkeepers. They just sign homegrown players for the quota. Carson, the Man City goalkeeper sub, Ben Foster, Sam Johnson signed like for Newcastle. So you see these guys who are there, who will come in. They're obviously decent players, but their sole purpose is to sit on the bench, fill a quota, and come in if needs be. His performances at Preston and Sheffield, obviously, and Sheffield later, warranted us to be interested, and Liverpool as well. And notoriously, Celtic were very interested and supposedly had a pre-contract set up until someone pulled out late, which is a concurrent theme so far in a few of our signings linked with Celtic. They've come to Rangers, which I guess is a good indication. But in terms of the stature of the club, I think it helps that he's from the UK. Although in England it might fall on deaf ear, perhaps more so in Scotland, because you can't get away from Rangers in Scotland. The size of the club, he will have an understanding of how big Rangers is. You can never blame someone who comes from, let's say, France or Russia or Sweden coming and being able to underestimate the club size, because it's understandable. But if he's lived in England, he's been a football fan, he's played football, he will be more than aware of the size of Rangers, but he will still likely be taken aback, because I don't think anyone can truly understand the proportion of the size of the club and the fanatic sort of following in Scotland until you come here and play. And I just think the fact that he's been at Liverpool in and around an elite environment and with an elite coach and players can only help us. Although he didn't play much, and he was obviously later sent on loan to Sheffield United, just the idea in which he's been playing in, obviously Sheffield United were a Premier League club recently, two clubs with infrastructure that matches, if not betters ours, can never be a problem.
And Kyle, the one thing for me is that we're obviously spending $3 million for this guy off the bat. And we know that he's not played in the top league down there. We get that. We understand that. The one thing for me is that spending $3 million on a guy from Liverpool, he ain't coming up here to sort of play second fiddle. I wonder if he is coming up to partner Goldson, or we could be looking at three at the back for next season.
Yeah, well, it's something I was mentioning in the group chat yesterday, was I think we are going to see that three at the back a lot more this season. You know, we saw glimpses of it. Maybe it was a slightly different in terms of it was a back five against Dortmund at times, but you've seen what they can do with the fullbacks. We're pushing on. We've got the personnel to do it ultimately. Again, maybe that sort of ties back to what we were talking about previously in terms of, is it super urgent to find a replacement for Barisic defensively if he is going to be further up the pitch next year? Maybe, but yeah, three at the back. I think we've got, as I said before, the ideal personnel to do that. The centre-back positions now, we have a lot of them now, so I think going forward we might be looking to one or two. Katic, Hollander maybe springs to mind, Simpson as well. But yeah, it's something I hope we do see going forward next season. I thought James Sands filled that position yesterday quite well as well. So yeah, hopefully it's something we see in the future.
Listen, I think you're absolutely right. I think the options we have, whether we're playing a 2 or a 3, are incredible. I think what it may mean as well is that we might not see John Lundstrom have to drop into a 3 at any point, which I think is good for us because we get to see him in his natural position. Kyle, I'm going to stay with you. Bassey deal looks done and dusted by all accounts. Where do you stand on it?
It's something I've been banging on about in the Wednesday bulletins. It's a transfer that we needed to make. The Joe Aribo one, fits in with the player trading model, but I mean the deal that we've got for Bassey is about £23 million up front, thereabouts.
Incredible.
5 million in add-ons and a 10% sell-on clause. It's an outstanding deal. I think that makes him the records player sold from the SPFL, which is fantastic, which bodes well going forward. But yeah, I mean, he's been a terrific servant to the club. It's funny, I was talking to somebody earlier on today, if you remember that Sparta Prague game where he started centre half away from home, well, the kids in the stadium, and he just, I was worried for him then, because he looked like he was wearing ice skates, didn't he, when he was on that pitch? He looked so uncertain defensively when he's heading. But then, if I recollect correctly, that it was Barisic had a wee dip in form and he came into the team and he just never lost his place. He's been an outstanding player for us for the last 6-7 months. Put in some huge performances. The Europa League final, I want to note I'll forever remember him bombing down the left wing to cross the ball in for Sakala against Celtic in the Scottish Cup semi-final, and even in that Scottish Cup final against Hearts, he was utterly immense. I mean, he'll be big boots to fill, but ultimately it's a transfer that we needed to make, and I'm glad we've made it in the deal we've got. I don't think I can have any complaints about it.
Yeah, Patrick, a couple of guys that I've sort of clocked in. Graham McDowell, I don't imagine to see Graham McDowell so soon after the Open finishing. How about you never know? Basically saying hello to all the dosh we're going to get coming in, and really crediting the club on getting an amazing piece of business over the door. Felix Peters also jumps in to say that we are going to miss him, and we're obviously now looking at going from losing players to the AFCON to not, because Aribo, Bassey and Balogun, we don't have that problem, if you like, to worry about. Where do you stand on the Bassey deal? I've seen a lot of bits and pieces that have came out for you officially on Twitter. I think in the first instance, it's a cracking deal for the player, for Rangers, and Ajax are getting an absolute diamond, are they not?
Yeah, I corroborate all what Kyle said. I think there's been a few times we've failed to sell our assets at peak value, for better or worse. And we've now sort of not lived to regret it, because we've done things fantastic, won trophies, got European finals with those players. But from a financial standpoint, this puts us on steady footing. And I can only imagine on the other side of the city how the financial experts will react if we are able to qualify for the Champions League on top of getting the Bassey money. That'll be an influx of 55-60 million upwards. But no, I think Bassey is a great player with fantastic potential. What I do think as well is that his value to us specifically is far greater in Europe, because that's where his defensive abilities actually, when he needs to match insane athletes and recovery and more on the back. But domestically, replacing his output won't be too difficult, I don't think. Not to say it'll be super easy, but our defenders don't defend much domestically. They're more so expected to be passive and active contributors to build up play and all that. And I think the idea in which Bassey was worth 23 million to us, it's not. He wasn't, but his potential is to someone else. And the best thing for Ajax is the only way he moves up from Ajax, who are a fantastic club, definitely, at least if you look at playing squads and what they've achieved in the last 2 or 3 years, within the top 15 and 20 clubs in Europe, the only upwards move for him from Ajax is to a top 6 team in England, and that will cost them 60-70 million. And it's been well noted that we have a sell-on clause, and that would push this deal, let's say if he goes for what Lisandro Martinez went to Man United for, up to upwards of £30 million, which is absolutely fantastic business and is firmly the glass ceiling. I don't think we can shatter that figure within the next 5 or 10 years. I think that's firmly what the max you can get for a player in Scotland. And to go for a player who is fairly unpolished, doubted a year ago, to being able to sort of now play for a Champions League quality team who are consistently in the knockout rounds is testament to both the Bassey's character, the coaching team at Rangers, the scout who found him from the Leicester under-21s team.
Yeah.
I think this is a collective success that needs to be replicated and sold to the incoming players. And I do think this, alongside the Aruba deal, will go a long way when we're trying to convince both general players, but when we're trying to recruit those sort of elite younger players in England who have been discarded from the Man City Academy or the Man United Academy, they see this blueprint and they come up here and they come and they conquer and then they leave for money. Works well for everyone.
Kyle, I think Patrick raised a really good point there. I think for the outsiders looking in, and let's be honest, I don't have the numbers in front of me there, but there will be 17, 18, 19-year-olds been released by the big clubs down south, and they will be looking for somewhere to go. Calvin Bassey is absolutely the benchmark of what you can do if you apply yourself, believe in your ability, stick in, all that good stuff. You could come here and completely change your life. You know what I mean?
100%. I mean, even if you didn't get that move to a Premier League club or to go into the next step, you're still going to have your life changed playing for Glasgow Rangers in terms of the experience. But yeah, it's something that we've got to be doing it. I mean, you even look at our policy this year, maybe not to the extent that we're signing youngsters from teams like City and Liverpool, but I mean, it certainly looks the way that we're going to do it in the future, because we have very aggressively went out and bought the best talent from a lot of teams in Scotland. I know Loveless from Millwall as well springs to mind, and I mean the guys on the board, their job is to make us as attractive for good football players to come and do it, and there's not many more teams. I think it's safe to say that Ajax maybe are perhaps the sort of premier team in Europe in terms of bringing youth through and then selling them on. I mean, because you look at all the top clubs, they all have players that used to play with Ajax in them at some point. So, I mean, it's no Rangers fan likes to admit it that we are a stepping stone club, but that is the reality of things now. And going forward, that we look very attractive to these players coming in, and it can only be to the benefit of Rangers.
Patrick, Dougie's jumped into the YouTube comments, and he makes a couple of points I think. Well, the first one that he referred to was he's a wee bit surprised about the lack of Dutch players that Giovanni, Dave Vos, Roy Mackay have looked to sort of bring across to the club. And in a similar vein, some of these guys have been released by your Ajax, PSV Eindhoven, etc. They haven't rocked up latterly, and he's just flashed up on the feed. Who's identifying the players at this stage, do we think? Do we think it's Giovanni? Do we think Ross Wilson is going to Giovanni and saying, listen, there is a dozen players. What do you think? How do they fit in with how you want to play?
I'll answer the first, obviously, first. I mean, it would make sense naturally for the coaching team to want to have some players they might be familiar with. Although none of the coaches outside of Dave Vos obviously have been working in Holland in the last 2 years, but you'd expect they would have an active interest in their former clubs and just the National League from where they're from. But Holland isn't the sort of market in which you can just go in and take players from, because if you're a good player, I think the best example of this is the reported interest we had in Joey Veerman last year, is that if you're a good player for a team outside of the big three in Holland, one of those big three will want you. And for a Dutch player, staying in your own country and playing for a team, let's say Feyenoord, Ajax and PSV, Ajax are a bigger club than Rangers. I think that's not too controversial to say. I would say Rangers are bigger than both PSV and Feyenoord, but those are teams with Champions Leagues playing in Europe, and you're able to stay in your home country and develop. And those are clubs who also sell players for 30 plus million to the Premier League. So those are all attractive steps. The other facet is also that if you're playing well, you'll also be quite pricey. So I do think maybe we could see one or two come through, but again, if we're trying to bid for them, so will Ajax, so will PSV and Feyenoord, but I don't think that will stop us necessarily. And for the recruitment process, this is me just guessing, but I think it's fairly accurate. The fact we work under Director of Football with Ross Wilson, he'll be the one sort of networking and organising all the scouts. Van Bronckhorst will ask for profiles or types of players he likes. And then Wilson will relay that to the scouts, and they'll try and find players that match the specifications or requirements. So let's say with Lawrence, GBB was like, we need someone who plays across the three and who is a tangible goal scorer, takes a lot of shots, and is just going to get our general attacking numbers up. They will have gone and then found a player with high shots per 90, who scores a bit, undervalued, free agent sort of thing, and he'll be brought in. I do think obviously GVB will have the say, at the end. Wilson will sort of present him with the players, and then he and the coaching team will have the last say alongside him. But I don't think it's like how it used to be, let's say in the 90s, where a player would go and find, or the coach would go to agents and then try and find players himself. They spend too much time on the training pitch actually coaching players, which is their job, to then have enough time to know the market that well.
Yeah, Pete Lawrence jumps in and says a lot of the movement, of course, that we're experiencing maybe just now in the summer will be based on budget and wages. It's going to be interesting to see how that discussion begins to change now that we know that we're cash rich with Calvin Bassey cash. Kel, one thing I do want to say to you, when we've obviously not long went live across the board here at this Ibrox, something we're really happy with, and we thank our listeners and viewers for their contributions so far. We did go for a couple of weeks just stopping short of thinking, you know, we really need Ross Wilson to do something here because we need something to speak about. But I think we've now got to the stage where we're just getting big, well, not big name, but we're getting player after player to speak about, and everyone that's came in so far has came in with a bit of excitement. I think we can go into the season as things stand just now. We've still weeks to go. Well, a lot of excitement looking forward.
Yeah, it's been great. It's there seems to be a real plan, which I really like. Just even in some of the Wednesday bulletins, having discussions about not necessarily the playing personnel, but some of the other guys that are bringing in, like your John Parks and your Seri Bowley. I mean, that he seems like a really exciting appointment to me. Sorry, there's my phone going off because I've said Seri, but but yeah, it's really exciting. As I said, there seems to be a good plan. Sometimes you see players coming in and you're a bit like, why are we signing that guy? But in this instance, there's not one player that I can see where we've gone, what's he for? I mean, we've largely talked about it. We needed a striker. We needed somebody in the right wing. Now we need a left back. I know Ben Davies isn't perhaps an out-and-out left back, but he can certainly cover that position. We seem to have gone out and identified all the areas that we needed to have strengthened in, and ultimately all the signings seem quite sensible. I'm really excited about Matondo. I think Cholak has showed glimpses about what he can do up front. Lawrence, maybe still to see a bit of him, but again, it just makes sense. We need that type of guy that can drive forward, sit in the 6, the 10, the 8. Yeah, and I'm really already, I'm really excited.
Can't wait.
Next season, and it's not even started yet, eh?
And listen, Patrick, Kyle's absolutely right. We are excited about the player the quality of player that we're bringing in. Just before we go on to Tillman, because I'm really interested to know what you've got to tell us on him. The squad is bloated. I think we now have a situation where we do have too many players, and Scott Cameron, who's joining This Is Ibrox very shortly, jumps in and says, you know, are we putting some sort of extension onto Auchenhowie as things stand just now? Because we do have a really large first team squad. I mean, there's guys that I've forgotten. Simpson, Katic. I mean, these guys must be gutted knowing that Ben Davies is coming up to play for Rangers, because it must surely throw their future into doubt. Roof he's been linked this morning, I think, with one of the Sunday papers about a move down to Derby on loan. Helander, is he ever going to be fit to manage a season? These are all guys that I suspect would be on relatively decent cash that, do you know what I mean? Like or not, I think someone at Ibrox is going to have to make a decision on them.
Yeah, I think for the rest of the window, I don't think it's a financial consideration should we bring players in. We've got money from a reborn back and then the possibility of Champions League money. I think it's a numbers game. Obviously, there's no shortage of players to get rid of. They kind of fall into two camps. There's the sort of overgrowing youth players who are now needing to take their first steps out of Rangers in this sort of framework of being on loan and stuff. So that's like Stephen Kelly. These guys are good, but not Rangers quality. And for the sake of the club and themselves, should probably leave, preferably on a permanent, but a loan is suitable. James McPake is similar. Kai Kennedy, who went on loan. We saw Ben Williamson go on loan. Cole McKinnon on loan, although he falls into more the category of the exciting youth player. It was great to see that we got him on an extended 3-year deal. And then there's also the sort of non-domestic players that we've produced who are here and just aren't up to the grade. So that's your Katic, your Simpson, to a lesser extent your Helander, who you have to consider his injury proneness and how a player can only be as good as they are available. But I think he's at the point where he appears to be injured, and probably that will put off any suitors. And his deal expires at the end of this season, so it's probably at the point where we're going to keep him, and he'll play when he's fit, and accept that we're not going to get a fee. I have to write that off. As for Simpson, you'd hope someone takes him on loan, because he's only played 30 games of professional football, albeit he hasn't impressed at Rangers. Someone must be looking at the fact that Rangers signed him and Bournemouth brought him up and played him a bit in the Premiership. There must be something there, and I hope someone does for the sake of his career.
Yeah.
As for Katic, I think he's obviously a fine centre-back in the sense that he heads it well. He's an aggressive jeweler. He's just not the sort we need. He's not good enough on the ball, either carrying or passing it. And I do think as the window gets shorter and we come to the end, teams will panic and someone will either put in a bid or a loan for him, similar to what we saw to his move to Hajduk last season. Though I think the idea that we could recoup the 2 million we spent on him is probably a fantasy at this point. But I think any money will be good. But more importantly, it's just sort of making space for some players. And I think that Kelly probably on loan. There's murmurs of McCrory on loan, but I think getting Katic, Simpson, and Hollander is important because we need to open up a pathway for King to get some minutes, as he's one of the top prospects of the club. Albeit we'll play 50, 60 games, so everyone will get some minutes. But I really like to see a concerted effort to get him, Lowry, 20 plus games and prep them to be even bigger contributors next season and maybe even starters if they impress enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I think youth's going to be something I'm going to come on to very shortly. Cammy refers to Charlie McCann this season, how he will be used. Will he be hanging about as part of the first team squad? Is he going to be farmed out on loan? We'll come to him shortly. Scored a cracker, we have to say, down at Blackpool. Malik Tillman was announced sort of well after tea time on Friday night, Patrick. I know very, very little about him, brutal honesty. What can we expect to see from this gentleman?
I'm not going to pretend like I know much more than you. I know what the data says, and I've watched some clips of him. But I think the best cosign you can do is Julian Nagelsmann, the Bayern Munich coach, said, albeit he's not going to play as a striker, said he's a really good young striker. So within the Bayern context, they saw him as sort of a playmaking nine, sort of like a second striker to play up top with someone. But he said in the interview today when he signed that he sees himself more as a 10 or an 8. So as a traditional attacking midfielder or as a box-to-box midfielder. And his dynamic last season was similar to what we saw with Lowry this year. He played half a season for the Bayern Zweite team. They play in the 4th division of German football. It's not that great quality, but it's probably somewhere, I would harbor, I guess, around similar in quality to the Scottish Championship. And he absolutely killed it. He was getting a goal and an assist every other game. The stats were fantastic. I think the best way to put it is that his stats came out very similar to Joe Aribo's. And we all know how good a season he had last year. He appears to be pretty well-rounded, nice physical profile, quite tall, quite quick, agile, good balance, has an eye for a goal, is a bit well-rounded, and seems like to be, unlike Amad Diallo, Tillman seems to have the sort of requisite physical technique and or mix of physical profile and technique that will allow him to hit the ground running. Also, he's arrived early enough, and this is really important for youth players, especially when they come to a country which they've never lived in, that they get an extended period before the game started. Before they start, I know it's only 2 weeks or so for Tillman, but that will be invaluable, as it would be difficult for him to come in, like let's say Diallo did halfway through a season where everything's 100 miles an hour and expect him to hit the ground running. He also speaks fluent English, which is really important. Plays for the American national team, but he grew up in Germany. American dad, German mom. But the fact he speaks English is incredibly important because he will be playing as a 10 or an 8, and those are sort of the heartbeat of the team, or the link pins between the attack and midfield, and his ability to communicate with everyone will be important. And the fact that he'll be able to do so comfortably is great. I really like the sort of structure of the deal. It's a loan to buy, so we get to see if he's good, and if we think he's good, we get to buy him. It worked really well for Celtic last season. It's worked well for a few other clubs, and I do think it's indicative of where the market goes. We have Sands on a similar deal, and I think it's perfect. No ties. We can cut them if he doesn't do well, but I would back him to do well. And I hope to see him play soon. Maybe West Ham might be too soon, but hopefully we'll see him against Spurs at Ibrox.
Kyle, I'll tell you what I do love. I really, really like the fact that Bayern Munich are happy to send their player to Rangers. I think what we're seeing, probably before Gio came in, and indeed when Gerrard was there, the profile of the football club and the players coming to the football club has changed dramatically in the last 2 years or so. I mean, you look at us bringing in Aaron Ramsey. Now, you could argue whether that deal worked for the club or not. But we bring in Diallo from United, who they had put out a fortune on to bring him in across from Atalanta rather. I just think there's a change on. I think with us being able to go to Bayern Munich and sort of talk ourselves up, promote the football club, promote the game over here, promote how we would use their player. There's something really positive happening under the current regime at Ibrox, I think, and it's something we should all really be looking forward to in the coming season.
100%. I mean, we have done ourselves all the favours in the world, by getting to this Europa League final. It's put us on a massive stage. I mean, Bayern Munich are no mugs. I mean, they've produced some of the best talent in the world. I mean, the World Cup, German World Cup squad that won the World Cup, I think 50-60% of the players on that squad that were all playing for Bayern Munich at some point. So yeah, it's been a long time since we've been linked with teams like Liverpool and Bayern Munich as well. But as I said, there's obviously a plan. I mean, I watched the interview on Rangers TV, like Patrick, and it's just, he's got that quiet sort of German confidence about him.
Silent assassin.
Yeah, it's just very like matter of fact. Like, I'm here to do a job. As he said, it's an 8 or a 10, and I'm actually really looking forward to seeing him play. He looks the part as well. I know that's. I see Patrick going, "Oh my God, what are you basing that off of?" But he just, just the way he speaks, the way he talks, the way he conducts himself, he just seems like a really confident, young lad, and I'm really excited to see him play. But I wouldn't be surprised to see more signings like this in the future, to be honest with you. I know Patrick's already touched on it in terms of the sort of high-profile youngsters from top 6 Premier League teams, from top teams in Germany, top teams in I suppose Schalke as well. We're bringing in Matondo from Schalke, but yeah, there's just a real different feel, and I think the backroom staff we have. I mean, let's not go unnoticed that Roy Mackay played for Bayern Munich for who knows how long.
Yeah.
I think he knows a couple of people at the club as well, and even with the Bassey transfer, I mean, they were obviously desperate to get him, but I think Voss has perhaps played a hand in that too. So yeah, it's really good to see us being taken notice of by some of the top clubs in Europe, and that they're happy to have their talent coming and playing for us there. So it's can only be positive.
And I think as well, Kyle, and I'll stick with you, definitely a player to come to Rangers and play. And by that, you mean he's not really going to come in and not get a jersey every week, I think, which makes the midfield, whether it's a 3 we're playing in there or whether it's a 2, we want to slightly ahead. We've got a lot of guys going for 3 jerseys, and that's without Hadji being fit. We know that Lawrence can play pretty much across. We've got Davis, Arfield, Lundstrom, Jack, Lowry, Kent. Do you know what I mean? We've got lots of options moving forward from the sort of 6 forward, if you like, up to whoever it is that's playing up top.
Yeah, there's loads going on there, as you said. There's so many names. We've got a very big squad, but I mean, I don't know if it's just because we're not used to that, because I know Gerrard like to keep his squad quite trim. We had that old 2 players for every position. Yeah. I don't know if it's a more European way of thinking, if they have larger squads. I'm not too sure, but again, I don't really see it as a negative. Van Bronckhorst, especially in Europe last year, I felt that we adapted to play against other teams, whereas very much under Gerrard's reign, it was, this is the way we are playing. Let's see if you can break us down, and it can only help having quite a lot of personnel to say, I mean, who knows? I mean, you might be playing Sakala one week and playing Matondo a different week, depending on exactly who they're up against. So that is the way Gio operates. I think it's the way the backroom team operates. So yeah, I'm all for it. I do think we will see the squad getting cut down, because you're not happy if you're not playing. But
yeah,
the other side I would say to that is we're going to be in hopefully four competitions next year. I don't see any reason why we can't have another good European run, given the experience of the players, the new players that we've brought in. There seems to be a right good freshness, and I'm really hoping that the plan that the backroom team have just all comes together at the start of the season.
Patrick, I think Kyle's absolutely right. I think what we're going to see this season is a almost like a horses for courses type scenario. So I think you will see, whereas previously we've seen maybe the same guys play Thursday, Sunday, etc., etc., etc. I think there's more of a chance now to maybe see, and I think Gio will maybe now have the opportunity to just rotate things a little bit better than what he's maybe had to do previously. He's going to have the options to rotate, even if it means getting guys to, Matondo play right one week and then the left the next to accommodate Scott Wright on the right-hand side, to use as an example. I think we're going to have options now that maybe we've not had last season, and certainly not any options that Steven Gerrard's had previously.
Yeah, I think all the signings as so far, especially Cholak and Lawrence, kind of raised the floor of what we have. They'll do well domestically. There's no qualms about that. They'll score goals. What we've done, what is quite obvious, we've had a concerted effort to sort of buy players who are more in line with what is required for a Van Bronckhorst system, some goal scoring midfielders who take shots, a larger sort of outright target man, because Morelos is a bit of everything. He can be a target man, he can be a poacher, all of the above, but this is an outright target man who will stick his back to the goal, play off, links and play, score some goals, and is a good finisher. So I do think we're sort of both equipping correctly for the system and also correspondingly bringing in some good quality. Also the versatility of the two, let's say, wide men we've brought in so far. Lawrence and Matondo can both play in most positions. Lawrence is a 10-8 left winger and can, if needed be, plays a centre forward, whereas Matondo is primarily a right winger who can also play on the left and on occasion play up top as well.
Yeah.
So we are bringing in as players who are multifaceted in both their skills, approach, and position, which is great. We've reaped the benefits of Bassey being able to do so. He was able to fill in two positions fantastically, and that obviously increases his value. So if we can bring in players who show that they're able to sort of dominate in Scotland and hold their own in Europe in multiple positions, that's invaluable for, let's say, a top 5 league team, and invaluable for us while they're still with us. But no, I do think so far there's still some more business to do, but it's looking very positive.
And Kyle, we've obviously, Blackpool was meant to be the second, of course, pre-season friendly, but after the farce over in Portugal where the guys forgot to flick the switch on, the Blackpool game suddenly becomes the first competitive pre-season friendly. Before we get into the guts of the game, how we lined up, impressive goals from Borna Barisic and Charlie McCann, the amount of Bears that travelled south for that was incredible. Now, I think, I'm in Falkirk, but I think it's round about Glasgow Fair weekend. You'll know better than I.
Yeah.
And we like to get the sunshine at this time of year in the summer, of course we do. But my goodness, there are no other supporters on the planet like us that follow us everywhere we go, all around the country. And for us to go down to Blackpool in the manner we did, and the droves that we did, for a pre-season friendly, it's just, it beggars belief. It's incredible.
Yeah, it seemed to have worked out the sort of perfect day for all the Bears that travelled in terms of the sunshine. I mean, I think, what was there, about 12,000 supporters officially in the stadium, which is absolutely mental. I saw a lot of stuff on Twitter from the Blackpool supporters saying that it was outrageous. The usual sort of vloggers that go to these games were all there, and just to get the atmosphere in. And I know we got a fair few shout outs on the Blackpool TV. You want to say you're surprised every time, but you're not really, are you? I mean, it's so nice that people go down and just have a cracking day out. And by all accounts, everybody behaved themselves, and I've not heard a bad word said about no incidents, no arrests down there. So yeah, just all in all, a great day out, and another memorable pre-season trip down to England for the Rangers supporters.
Absolutely. And listen, Patrick, I think it does everything that has been positive about the game. The atmosphere seemed to be really good. I saw footage on it today. Everyone seems to be having a great old time. A wee bit disappointed I probably wasn't there myself, to be honest with you. It looked cracking. On to the game itself, we saw Cholak start again. I think what you're looking at just now is Cholak being starting striker going into the Livingston game without any real doubt. I think there's always doubts over where Morelos is in his fitness. Same for Roof. Indeed, if the latter's ever going to be fit again to play a number of games for the football club amidst other sort of stories that are going around with potential a loan deal elsewhere. I think Jack, Kamara and Lundstrom started in the middle of the park. It's not a midfield three that I would hope to see often this year. How did you find that we lined up? Were you happy with the way things were looking from the start?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can really read much into at least the tactical setup. No, not the tactical setup, the sort of player setup and personnel. Jack Lundstrom and Kamara won't play together much, if all. Maybe if we're in the Champions League and we're away from home at Real Madrid and we need three sitters. But I think it's more so just to get the minutes, because obviously Kamara failed to get any minutes at Sunderland because he was one who was supposed to come on before the lights broke. But beyond that, it was unsurprising. Obviously, the raft of changes we made at halftime saw everyone get a bit of minutes. Obviously, as you pointed on, seeing tens of thousands of Rangers fans was no surprise, but seeing Bye Bassey score a goal with his right foot was not a surprise. And it probably wasn't even the best goal of the day. I think Charlie McCann's might have been better. Yeah. So, it looked like good fun for everyone, fans included, nice and sunny, a good run out. And I really think there's some merit for sort of micro-analysing everything that happens in a friendly game. Yeah. But I just think the main things are getting minutes and legs, avoiding injuries, and getting players some confidence. And Barisic is the ultimate confidence player. So seeing him score will hopefully have us see a sort of rejuvenation similar to when he scored that free kick against St. Mirren all those years ago. I was a bit sad Cholak's goal was rolled offside, because even though it wouldn't count as his first official goal because it's a non-competitive game, it would be nice to see him get a goal. But the finish was good, and the movement with Tav was nice. It came a bit sort of unstuck when we made mass changes, when we changed the centre-back partnership, but that's expected. Blackpool probably not wanted it more, but they kept more of a succinct team going, and that showed in the last 30 minutes per se. But it was nice to see all the players play. A bit concerning not to see Zukowski at all. Obviously, Devine deserved to see some minutes, but yeah. I do wonder what's happening. The only thing we've really seen about him was heard he was injured for the last bit of last season, and now we've seen him look absolutely massive, like a bodybuilder, which is, I guess, what we see a lot of our players do, which is great. But outside of that, I mean, I think the two tests that are more important are West Ham and Spurs, because those will be more indicative of the teams who play in Europe and our ties against Celtic.
Kyle, one of the things for Barisic's goal that I was really impressed to see, more so in the current climate where we know that sort of Calvin Bassey's further off. I don't think there's a lot of people that really think that, we've lost Kyle. Patrick, I'll stay with you. One of the things that did get me on the goal that Barisic scored was how he was so high up the pitch. And I mean, you're right to refer to him coming in on his right hand side and scored him with his right, but because he was really, I mean, he was effectively at the corner flag when he won the ball, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was pushed up quite high. I think we just turned over possession, so naturally, when we're in possession, our wing backs like to go high. Not as much as under Gerrard, because then our wingers would sort of hedge in slightly and give them the avenue to go incredibly high, but we're a possession heavy team, so our wing backs will be auxiliary wingers, and I think Tavernier is the best example of that. But no, it was good. The anatomy of the goal is completely down to Barisic. He wins the ball, plays it off, gets it back, and puts it into the back of the net. I don't think it's repeatable. I don't think we should expect him to start doing that every other game or so, but I do think we all know that he has some good ball striking skills. There's a reason he stands over quite a few free kicks. But in a general sense, I think confidence is the most important bit. He, for the most part of last season, failed to maintain any confidence. And there was a few junctures in which were just completely gut-wrenching for him, not least the sort of February Old Firm. But I do think it is good for him to get a goal, even if it isn't going to do much because it's a friendly, but just so he can sort of feel appreciated by the fans. Because I wouldn't blame him if he started to feel that bit. Does the fans were on his back, because as all professional footballers are, they're their own worst enemy and doubt themselves. So if it's not 100% positive from the fans, they might get a bit doubt themselves, which isn't to blame the fans. They're more within their right to sort of show their discontent if a player is continuously performing poorly. But we're at the point in which it seems good, and long may it continue. And
so Kyle's been good enough to jump back in from his jobby. But what so Kyle, we were talking about Barisic obviously scoring right peg, but the thing that other than scoring his right peg, of course, was how high up the pitch he was. I was quite impressed with how high up the pitch he was playing, and you just wonder if it's one of the things that he's going to have to really make sure he's going to have to nail that side of the pitch down really quite quickly as well, I would suggest, because we're now very aware that we're in the realms of potentially looking for a new left back to come in. Do we need a new left back? Borna Barisic, I think, has to do a bit more to prove to Giovanni that he can make that position his very own.
Yeah, as I've alluded to sort of earlier on, 100%. I think we need another left back in there. There's just, when you've got a Warrior Borna, he's different. He's on a different level to other left backs that we've seen. We know he's got a wicked left foot. I mean, he can. I think that maybe him and Tavernier are on a par for being the best crossers of the ball into the box at the club. But yeah, just for backup, it's happened too many times that he's just gone into himself, and you can see it. He's a confidence player. I mean, I really hope that the performance that he put in yesterday kicks him on to have a good start to the season, because he played well. He took his goal really well. I think the fact that, I don't know if he's touched on it, but the fact that he challenged for the ball and won it back, so high up the pitch as well, is what we should be looking for him to do next year. So yeah, I very much do hope we bring another left back in, but I've got all faith in the team. I'm sure Ross Wilson's got another one on his list. So
absolutely, it must be a long list. Goodness me. Listen, Paul McGarrigle jumps on and says that he was screaming at Borna to launch himself further up the pitch. So he listens to someone. There's no two ways about that. Kyle, what I want to speak to you about in a bit of depth actually is Charlie McCann, midfielder we brought in from Manchester United. And I think he arrived in I don't know if he arrived in a blaze of glory as such. Gerrard seemed quite impressed with bringing him in. He came in, B team, has clearly impressed the guys in and around the academy. And while I think there's been a lot of focus on guys like Alex Lowry, deservedly so, Leon King, deservedly so, Charlie McCann, I think, is one that we can also be really, really excited about.
Yeah.
And his technique for the goal down at Blackpool yesterday was really, really incredible. Strikes across it, outside the boot, great connection, great finish. And it just makes you wonder, is he someone that we could potentially use this? It would be another midfielder, another centre midfielder, a 6, 8, 10, whatever, but he'd be another one that would be in and around. And is there enough opportunity for Charlie McCann this season?
I'm not sure. I mean, he's always mentioned, isn't he? Whenever you're talking about youth players, it's always McCann, Lowry, and King, isn't it? And I think that stands in good stead. But I mean, from the glimpses that we've seen of him, he seems to have everything. He's got really good technical ability. I mean, it's the obvious comparison to make, isn't it? That he's, that a mini Stephen Davis. So
of course it is, yeah.
I mean, there's so many similarities to the two of them, just even perhaps in terms of their stature. That for me is the only thing that I've got reservations about McCann, is how small he looks physically compared to everybody else on that pitch. But I mean, when he was on yesterday, he did, even though Davis was on the pitch at the same time, they seemed to be, taking control of things, happy to have the ball in his feet.
Yeah.
Really good passes out wide, linking things up. And the thing that I liked yesterday, apart from the technique of that goal, was, I said goal before the ball had even come to his foot. you just knew, you could see that he was his reading of the game is what separates him, I think, from a lot of the other youth players, is he knows when it's coming. But just to have the wherewithal to do that and then just strike it, it was so sweet. But is he good enough to get in the team this year? If he hangs about, I don't think we'll get many games. I think it'll be, maybe 10 minutes at the end of if we're up against lower league opposition. And is that what a guy like that wants to be doing right now? I'm not too sure. I mean, as much as we've discussed Rangers being a club for taking guys like Tillman on loan and James Sands and stuff like that, we've got to be then doing that on a sort of lesser scale as well. And I very much think that McCann would fit in well to that. I think we possibly should be looking at loaning him out to, I mean, it's like a Motherwell, maybe a Hibs, something like that. I think he would fit in and around that quite well. But time will tell. I've got no idea what Van Bronckhorst is thinking. And I'll never forget, I think in his first interview for the club, he said that if you're good enough, you'll play. And I very much think that's the philosophy that he sticks by. So I do. I hope McCann does get a bit more game time this year, but I can't see it with the amount of central midfielders we've got.
And Patrick, Kyle's absolutely right. I think one thing they have to get really, really spot on is that by bringing in maybe guys like Tillman and Sands, bringing these guys in on loan isn't to the detriment of our own youth.
Yeah, you need to strike a balance, most definitely. That's incredibly important. The most important thing for a young player is to play. Obviously, some people have qualms over where they play. I think there's been a sort of paradigm shift within the club, seeing that in-house development can be sometimes better than going and being sent to a championship team in Scotland and being hoofed around and being playing on terrible pitches. I think the club has moved more so to a model similar to Man City, where you see a lot of their top youth players stay in-house and play. I think a really good example of that was when we were interested in McCarthy in January, but City decided against loaning him to us and would rather keep him and train the first team there. Phil Foden is perhaps the example of that. As for McCann, I think it's an interesting one, and I think he's probably the most to give or go out of the three, because King will stay, I think, and play quite a bit, as will Lowry. But McCann, there's less of a natural sort of position for him in the squad depth, because at 10 we have Hadji injured, so Lowry can take his minutes for pretty much the entire season, because Hadji comes back in January, but that isn't to say he'll be immediately hit the ground running. Hopefully he does, but it's a precaution, the idea that we need him there, because outside of him, it's Lawrence and Tillman. And Larry can also fill in slightly further back and on the left wing. But for McCann, it is, as we mentioned earlier, really congested in the engine room. He's obviously really good, but he's also at that point where you need to make the decision. Is it worth him sitting here training with the team, or should he go out and get minutes? Because he's good enough to now warrant a sort of loan from a Scottish Premiership team, or maybe some higher team in the EFL League One, which are teams that may be playing a style conducive to what we play, being close to one of the good ones in the EFL League One. And concerns over him on being unable to sort of scale his style there shouldn't be as much as if he was sent to, not to pick on like Partick Thistle, we've sent quite a few players to them, but a player like McCann, who does so much in possession, silky sort of smooth play, he won't be able to replicate that in Partick Thistle. But let's say he goes to a decent League One team in England, he might be able to do so. But I think there's really no wrong move for him per se. If he stays in house, plays 5 to 10 games, but trains with some top professionals on the daily, that's great. If he goes to a good English League One club, he'll be playing constantly, hopefully be playing a good style of football and could come on leaps and bounds. But we also do take the risk of releasing him too early and perhaps seeing him regress. But I would back him to do whatever he does, whatever the club decides for him to do so, I think will be best.
Yeah, interesting to hear you say about loaning some of these guys out to players in our own division, something that I don't think we've been overly cute on over the years, probably for a variety of different reasons. But the one that jumps out to me right now is the Lewis Mayo loan, of course. He's away to Kilmarnock, and you just wonder if we can do something similar with Charlie McCann. Should he not be getting the games at Rangers, which I think, personally, I would like to see. However, it's difficult to work out just how that happens. Interestingly enough as well, Patrick, to hear you refer to Hadji being missing until January, and you referred to how Lowry can jump in and take those positions, but not Tom Lawrence. So I look forward to seeing just how that change happens, if we do see Lowry as the guy that takes that 10 role, or if we do think that Lawrence could be used in that at all. One for the future, certainly. Tell you what, I do want to speak about, it's been a long time since we've been really, really fortunate enough to see Rangers' name in and around the Champions League draw, and there's a real interest for Rangers fans tomorrow at 11:30. And we know the 4 teams that we're going to be sort of paired up against. We reckon one's maybe up for debate. Monaco are in there, Sturm Graz, USG. Patrick, I like you do the proper pronunciation of that, because I ain't going to embarrass myself. And we reckon it's going to be Midtjylland who are going to be that 4th team as well, unless Larnaca can sort of pull something out of the bag. Pat, we'll come to you first. USG, go and embarrass me.
My French is very poor. If existed, Union Saint-Gilloise.
That's definitely better than I was going to say. Kyle, were you going to say something like that as well?
Yeah, pretty similar, man.
I thought that. Yeah, absolutely. Pat, who are you going for out of the 4? Who do you prefer?
Who do I prefer? I would take Sturm Graz personally. They lost their best striker in January, and then the one they replaced him with, who's done really well, is also linked with the move away. They're, I think, the weakest team of the 4. They came quite a far away second place in Austria. They do play quite a high gegenpressing system, which could be difficult for us, but we have really good players in possession playing the ball who are quite press resistant. We saw us beat Leipzig's press, so I have no qualms over us being able to beat Sturm Graz's press. It's also quite an easy away day. We quite temperate. We'll get quite a lot of people over there. And we have good history against them. Obviously, in the early 2000s, we beat them 4-0 Ibrox.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that it's mainly you want to avoid Monaco. They're a good team, although they did lose Tchouaméni to Real Madrid for, I think, £80 million, which is an indication of the quality they do have in their squad. They also have Wissam Ben Yedder, who ran Ronaldo and Messi close for the La Liga Golden Boot 2 years ago, which is another indication, or 3 years ago or so. And then they have a really good centre-back, Benoit Badiashile, but he might be off as well for £40 million to some team. I do think, though, that they have no fans. Monaco famously have very few fans, so that we could, it could be a good away day in the sense that 90% of the away fans when we play in Monaco would be Rangers fans. But I do think the step down between Midtjylland and everyone else, or rather Monaco and everyone else, is quite sharp. And even if we play Monaco, I think we have definitely a fighting chance. I think it's between close to 50-50. They've, obviously, some people will note, lost to Braga last season in the Europa League round of 16, whilst we beat Braga in the round after. And for the other three, I think it's very much of a muchness. USG, a fantastic story last season. They got, I think, promoted 2 years ago. They looked certain to win the league halfway through last year in Belgium, but they failed to do so. They lost their best player in Dennis Undav, who went to Brighton for 7 million. He got something like 30 goals last season, which is incredible. They're a small team from Brussels. They're decent, but they really fell off the cliff towards the second half of last season. So I don't see them as much of a problem. They also lost. They had a Japanese winger who was on loan from Brighton called Kaoru Mitoma, who is very good. But obviously, he's not going to be there next season. Midtjylland, we know quite a bit about. My opinion is that the Midtjylland side we played in 2018 is better than the current one. And I think that tells you it, because we're better than our 2018 Rangers side, and we handled them quite comfortably. And as for Sturm Graz, I think, again, we would handle them quite comfortably. And should we play Larnaca, it would be a nice away day, quite warm, but they're nothing to be feared. I think they're the worst of the 5 possible teams, but I don't think we'll have to deal with them, as Midtjylland should beat them. So my general thing is avoid Monaco, and you're very happy. If you get Monaco, it's fine. It's not the end of the world.
Kyle, it's great. I think in the first instance, it's great to be at this part of the draw. I don't think there's any doubt that we would like to be straight in the group stages, which is a given. Of course we would. I love the European football draws, I have to say. I hate all the wash that goes on ahead of it when they interview Vitor Baia for half an hour about nothing really anyone's interested in.
Right.
But do you know what I mean? We know the teams that we're going to be drawing. Who do you fancy? Just is there anyone off the top of your head that says, yep, ultimately progression is the main thing, so you want the easiest tie, surely? Who are you looking at?
Well, and there's not really much to add from what Patrick said, but it sounds like that Larnaca or Michelin might be the obvious ones to take from that. I mean, the only thing I was looking quickly on Twitter before it, and I saw that USG, I think they actually pumped Feyenoord in a friendly 4-0, I think it was, a couple of days ago. So I don't know how well that bodes. And the other thing I saw was Monaco are well up and running with their pre-season script so far as well. I think they've had 5 games. So that always worries me. I mean, I think that we were caught out a bit by that with the Malmo last year, the fact that they had they played already and they had that match sharpness. But yeah, I mean, I must admit, I love it when we get to these sort of early European qualifiers, because you know that the season is just about to start and that things are kicking off, and that's normally when Craig and I, after not seeing each other for about 8 weeks in the summer, decide to raise out our pits and start talking to each other again and say, oh, is this us? We going to the games and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, whoever we get, I mean, Monaco is the obvious one. You want to try and avoid them, because I mean, it's Patrick said, they've got some unbelievable players in their team.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, against any of the other 4, if we're calling them a 4, I'd still be quite confident given the squad, and it'll be really interesting to see what Gio lines up with. I actually thought perhaps the first. I was convinced that whatever we saw in the first half of the Blackpool game was how we would line up in our first game in the qualifiers. So I hope not, put it that way, based on that midfield 3. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see who we get, and whoever we get, I'll always be confident, I'll always back Rangers.
And Kyle, listen, I'm always of the opinion that you really gauge how close you are to being on it for the start of the season when they start to get the home friendlies. This week we see West Ham come to town on Tuesday and Spurs next weekend. 2 big games, big teams coming to play us on our own patch. I think that'll be a real gauge for us to really indicate where we are for going to Tony Macaroni in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, well, that's it exactly. I mean, the West Ham game, I know a lot of supporters are absolutely buzzing for that. I think that was the what a lot of people wanted the final to be in the Europa League last year, because I think that would have been just, not that the Frankfurt support was incredible, but I think that would have been another incredible game. But yeah, it'll be good that they're a massive step up in quality in terms of opposition compared to the Blackpool and Sunderland. So yeah, I'll be looking forward to it. Unfortunately, I'm not going to. I'm gutted that I'm not going to the West Ham game, but I'll get along to the Spurs game. I'm looking forward to. Looking forward to seeing some of the opposition players. But ultimately, I must admit, I was absolutely buzzing when I saw Sakala and Itten scoring against Real Madrid last year. So if we can get some of those scenes on the go, Cholak, as Patrick's mentioned, hopefully Cholak gets a goal for his confidence, and we'll see. I suspect we're going to see that sort of 3-5-2 or the 3-4-3 or whatever we're going to play as well. So yeah, it'll be good to see.
Patrick, 2 big home games, and I think it'll be a decent indication of where we are and where we're maybe missing as things stand currently.
Yeah, I think both the fact that we're playing at home in front of our own crowd and the fact that we are playing teams who are primarily quality. Should we win a game or win either of the games, it will make the news, much like it did against Real Madrid. I think it's just more high profile. There's reason to be more prepared, and obviously it's the penultimate and the final game before we go to Livingston, and then after that the European games. But I'll be at the Spurs game, not the West Ham game. I'm excited, as Kyle said, to see some of the Spurs players. Tillman, Son, I'm a big fan of. Harry Kane will be fun, but obviously nothing beats seeing Rangers play live, and they'll be the main attraction. And I do think probably towards the Spurs game, which is the final game, we will see our starting lineup for the Livingston or the European game, just because even though it is a friendly, it's all likely that will take us months before we come up against a team of the same quality as Spurs. So this is a great chance for us to sort of get a run out again.
Coming on,
well, thanks for having me.
Kyle, it's always good to have you on as well, buddy. Don't feel left out. I love having you on too, mate.
Oh, thanks. I'm just not as articulate as Patrick. That's what it is.
No, you're definitely not. There's no two ways about it. And you're back on Wednesday with the bulletin, and looking forward to that. Hopefully, lots to talk about. I'm sure there will be.
Yes, as long as there's no 7 or 8 o'clock sightings again on a Monday, then or a sighting 45 minutes before we're about to come on, I'm sure we'll be okay.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on, buddy. Well done. Appreciate it. Thank you for taking time out on your Sunday night to join us here at this Ibrox. Don't forget, you can follow us across all of our social media channels. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and we're now available right across the planet as far as wherever you listen to your podcast. You can get us there. By all means, check us out. If you are following us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Don't forget to toggle your notifications on so that you do get a little message each and every time we go live, which is of course every Sunday, and the bulletins Monday, Wednesday, Friday of every week. Big week for us as far as this week's concerned. We were due to interview Kevin Thompson last week, fell by the wayside for a little bit, my fault. We've rearranged it for this week, so really looking forward to that. So that should be available across our channels very, very shortly indeed. Thanks for taking time out on your Sunday night. Before we go, it would be remiss of us at this Ibrox not to mention that we lay to rest Andy Gorham tomorrow, the goalie, one that will never be seen again, and I very much doubt that there'll be a dry eye in the house tomorrow. I would suggest if you are going to Ibrox to get view of the cortege as it goes down past the stadium tomorrow, do yourself a favour and do his family a favour and keep your phones in your pocket if you don't mind. So listen, thanks for watching. Bye for now, and we will be back again as the week goes on. Thanks for watching. Good night.